Welcome to episode 2 of season 2 of Dalek Bumps Question Time. These questions were submitted to me on the Dalek Bumps Discord server and also in YouTube comments. Our first 3 questions are from Big Ben, who asks, question 1, could the Daleks defeat the Galactic Empire from Star Wars? I have no doubt that the Daleks could defeat the Galactic Empire with ease. As powerful as their forces are, they struggle to maintain a hold on a single galaxy, and lost in a war against a comparatively minuscule faction. The Empire has several major weaknesses that the rebels took advantage of. The easily exploitable weaknesses in their technology, the dogmatic imperial obsession with order and protocol, the compartmentalization of their regime that was required to tighten their grip on the population. All of these are things that the Daleks could also exploit when fighting the Empire. Flying Daleks would make mincemeat out of TIE fighters, and in a ground engagement, Imperial stormtroopers will be no match for the Daleks. To be honest, I don't think there is a single faction in Star Wars that could stand against the Daleks. Even if all of the major factions from the various eras unified into a combined army, I would still put my money on the Daleks. The only thing that could potentially swing the battle in favour of Star Wars is if enough Force sensitives got involved, but even that might not be enough. Question 2. Could the Daleks defeat the Flood from Halo? Again, I think there's absolutely no contest here. The Flood are a parasitic biological organism that infects hosts in order to survive, but Master Chief's shields and armour make it very difficult for Flood forms to infect him. The same logic would apply to the Daleks, and just like with Star Wars, I don't think there is a single faction in Halo that could contend with the Daleks. The UNSC are nothing, the Covenant have power but they only control a tiny segment of the galaxy, and their caste-based hegemony will crumble before the might of the Dalek war machine. Even the Forerunners, as powerful as they are, would likely fall to the Daleks just as they fell to the Flood, and just as the equally powerful Time Lords fell before the Daleks during the Time War. Question 3. Could the Daleks defeat the Borg from Star Trek? Against the Borg, the Daleks would likely fare quite well, but unlike the Star Wars question, I do think that if all the factions in Star Trek are unified against the Daleks, they might actually stand a chance. There is enough diversity in weapons and combat tactics between the forces of the Federation, the Borg, the Klingons, the Romulans, the Breen and the Dominion to possibly stand against the Daleks, but it would be a heavyweight fight, and if the Alliance did emerge victorious, it would likely be a Pyrrhic victory. In its current state of infighting and instability, however, the Star Trek galaxy would likely suffer the same fate as basically any other sci-fi franchise's universe would if pitted against the Daleks. Total extermination. Our next question is from the Bold Enterpriser, who asks, what are some concepts of the Daleks that you think should be further explored? Do you think they might come up with something ambitious like they did in The Stolen Earth and Journey's End? That's a good question, and there are a few basic story concepts that I think future story writers could use for interesting Dalek stories. I think it would be interesting to explore the Daleks' final end, in which the Doctor travels to the furthest extreme of their timeline and experiences the events that lead to either the destruction or reformation of the Dalek species. Not as their final episode in the show, more like an illustration of a possible end for them, just as Genesis of the Daleks, despite not being the first Dalek episode, explores a possible origin story for the Daleks. I think the Thals have been woefully underutilised in recent Doctor Who media, and it would be interesting to see how they are faring in the universe, particularly post-Time War. Same goes for other enemies of the Daleks, like the Draconians and the Mechanoids. They're overdue a return, I think. But another idea for a story that I've had, which somewhat relates to the other 2 ideas, is the notion that a future Doctor Who series or era could deal with the possibility of a new threat emerging, either from outside the universe or at some point in time that has not yet been explored, which forces the various factions of the universe to unite against it for their own survival, even the Daleks. At the end of Genesis of the Daleks, when the 4th Doctor, Harry and Sarah Jane are spinning off into the void, the Doctor talks about how he hopes something good will one day come of him refusing to destroy the Daleks, and I think this should be explored in the show. Imagine the irony of the idea that, faced with an overwhelming, unstoppable foe that makes the Time War and the Flux look like a playground squabble, the fate of the universe rests on the Daleks of all things. The idea of them uniting with the Doctor, the Cybermen, the Sontarans and all the other races of the universe against some Lovecraftian apocalyptic threat is bizarre but also quite interesting. Stranger things have happened in Doctor Who after all. Our last question is from Dalek Hybrid, who asks, would you ever consider making videos on fan-made Dalek stories? Also, in your opinion, when the Daleks come back, what should their new design look like and what would be the main colour for the drones? I do definitely want to cover fan-made Dalek projects in the future, specifically the Doctor Who anime, The Dalek That Time Forgot and Infiltration of the Daleks, among others. I've got a few big topics for Dalek videos in the pipeline, and these are all on the list. I also want to cover other big topics like specifics of Time War history, Dalek Empire and Dalek Universe, and more Big Finish reviews. In terms of the next Dalek design, I'd really like an alteration to the bronze Daleks that keeps the same basic prop structure but changes several details. A new colour scheme is essential, ideally the silver and black colours from Death to the Daleks. I'd replace the panels on the midsection and the dome with new pieces, made to look sleeker and featuring less rivets than before. This could visually indicate an evolution in Dalek design that would be great for their return in a new era, and would also allow the production team to utilise the pre-existing props with only a few tweaks without having to start again from scratch like with the Paradigm Daleks. And that wraps up the second episode of Series 2 of Dalek Bumps Question Time. Leave your answers to these great questions in the comments below.
Don't forget to click below to subscribe to
Dalek Bumps.